Give me- I'm going to order this hearing. It's a public hearing of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Committee of the Whole and Chairman of the Council. Today is Wednesday, November 17th, 2021. The time is 1:34 in the afternoon. And this hearing concerns three bills. Bill 24-408, entitled Closing of a Portion of a Public Alley in Square 5730, SO 19-45936. Act of 2021. The second bill is Bill 24-418, entitled Closing of a Public Alley in Square 5612, SO 21-06924, Act of 2021. And the third bill is Bill 24-442, entitled Closing of a Portion of a Public Alley in Square 5138, SO 20-07517. Act of 2021. This hearing is being conducted virtually. It is available to the public live via Zoom video conference broadcast platform. It is being televised, I believe, on Council Channel 13, cable television. It is also available live, I believe, on the chairman's website, which is www.chairmanmendelson.com/live. Again, chairmanmendelson.com/live. And it will be available on a permanent basis on the council's website, which is www.dccouncil.us. I want to say more. I should begin, though, by acknowledging this hearing is starting about 90 minutes late. I don't know if word got out very well, and I apologize for that. There was a funeral service that I attended, and I was actually asked to speak at this morning beginning at 11:30. And sometimes things happen that only happen once, like somebody's passing, which is very unfortunate. And rather than cancel the hearing, I thought it better to delay the hearing. And I apologize that the word didn't get out to everybody that I would be about 90 minutes late. The purpose of Bill 24-408 is to close a portion of an unimproved 20-foot wide dead-end alley in Square 5730. Square 5730 is bounded by Naylor Road, 28th Street, Gainesville Street, 25th Street, and Alabama Avenue, southeast in Ward 8. And the purpose is to facilitate the development of an affordable multifamily development with 87 units. The purpose of the second bill, Bill 24-418, is to close a portion of the public alley system in Square 5612. This square 5612, is bounded by Good Hope Road, 18th Street, 17th Street, and T Street Southeast in Ward 8. And the purpose is to formalize existing conditions of the square in the land records. At least that's the stated purpose. The purpose of Bill 24-442, which is the third bill, is to close a portion of the public alley system in Square 513A. Now, Square 5138 is bounded by Blaine Street, 45th Street, 46th Street, all in Northeast in Ward 7. And the purpose is to facilitate consolidation of property and provide for future development of a new affordable assisted living project. Bill 24-408 was introduced at the request of the mayor on October 1st. And Bill 24-418 was introduced by Councilmember Trayon White, also on October 1st, 2021. And Bill 24-442 was introduced by Councilmember Gray on October 8th, 2021. With this hearing and these bills, I think the Committee of the Whole is getting caught up to date in terms of street and alley closing legislation that's in the Committee of the Whole. We will work through these bills over the next couple of months, and it probably will be next spring before we will have an opportunity for another hearing on street and alley closing. And in fact, as I'm saying that, when I think of next spring, that means either March, right before the budget, or after the budget, which would be maybe July. The record will be open for 2 weeks. That is, anyone who wishes to submit comments to be included in the record for sure has 2 weeks till 5 p.m. on Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. 5 p.m. Wednesday, December 1st to submit the record. We're going to take testimony on these bills in turn. The first bill is Bill 24-408. And we have one witness on the list, and that's Carrie Kadlasek, who is with Goldston and Stores PC. Good afternoon, and my apologies for keeping you waiting.
Oh, good afternoon. That's no problem. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I believe we had a presentation. If I don't know who's able to control that, but if that could be brought up. Oh, great. Thank you. So you can go to the next page on that one. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Again, my name is Carrie Kadlacek with Goldston and Stores, and I serve as Land Use Counsel for Alabama Apartments, LLC on the proposed multifamily residential development to which this alley closing application pertains. I will be presenting the testimony in this case. We submitted our written statement and materials in support of the proposed alley closing to the Committee of the Whole on November 12th. As we noted in this statement, this application satisfies all applicable requirements of the DC Code, will further many of the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, and will enable a new all-affordable residential apartment building with family-sized units to be constructed. With this application, the applicant proposes to close a 20-foot wide segment of an unimproved and dead-end alley segment that bisects the development site. The subject property and alley segment are located on Alabama Avenue Southeast between Gainesville Street and Naylor Road in Ward 8. If you could go to the next slide, please. The alley segment that we are proposing to close is among multiple lots, all owned by the developer, and no portion of the alley segment proposed to be closed will be adjacent to properties with other owners. The alley network runs mostly north-south through Square 5730 and connects to Alabama Avenue to the west and further north to Naylor Road. This alley network in the same square is almost entirely unimproved. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Closing this alley segment will allow the development site to be combined into one that allows construction of the proposed building. The rest of the alley network in the square will remain open, and the developer has committed to improving the alley from the development site leading out to Alabama Avenue. The closed alley segment will facilitate the construction of a new all-affordable residential building. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The project will consist of a U-shaped 3-story building with 86 units and 21 surface parking spaces. The project will contain a mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units. The project has been designed with many sustainable features. It will satisfy the Green Community Standard and will include green roof, rooftop solar, and high-efficiency building performance features. In addition, the project will include a high-quality design and palette of materials that are not typical of an affordable project. Finally, the project will incorporate extensive landscaping and a tot lot for family residents. The project previously underwent Board of Zoning Adjustment review and approval, so the development team has engaged the community and in particular ANC 8B, the affected ANC, throughout the entitlement process for the project, including regarding this alley closing application. As a result, ANC 8B provided a letter in support of the application, and the development team continues to regularly meet with the SMD commissioner and will continue to do so. We have coordinated with numerous district agencies for both the BZA application and this application, including the Office of Planning and DDOT. We note that each of the affected agencies and utility companies has approved or has no objection to this application. The development team will continue to coordinate with utilities and agencies as necessary throughout the permitting and construction process. Next and final slide, please. With that, I will conclude my remarks, and I'm available to answer any questions the council may have and appreciate the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you. Your last name is pronounced Kadlacek?
Kadlacek, that's right, yes.
All right, so I got that slightly wrong. And the CEK is just like a CH.
Yeah, in Czech, it's CEK is usually pronounced Czech.
Yes, we'll see if I get that right next time. My apologies. You don't have a slide that shows the entire square with the alley system, do you?
Yeah, if you go back to, I think it's slide 2 or 3. Yeah, the next one. No, but 2 after this. There we go. Yeah, so you can see the alley system there. The red is what we're closing, and then you can kind of see how it goes up and then turns left to Alabama Avenue, and then also continues up towards Naylor Road there. That's all approved.
I'm sorry, go finish your sentence.
I said it's all unimproved, except I think maybe a small portion leading out to Naylor Road, but the portion leading from the development site out to Alabama Avenue is all unimproved.
And the development site is?
So it's basically it's lots.
It's a bunch of lots, am I right?
It's a bunch of lots. If you go back one slide, I think it shows the development site. Yeah, you can't really see the alley in here.
And that's oriented differently. So Alabama's at the top there?
Yeah, Alabama's at the top. The development site's
Naylor,
highlighted in red.
And where's Naylor?
Naylor is to the right. It's off of this image.
It's not in there at all.
Well, it kind of, yeah, it's sort of, you know, you see how the Alabama kind of splits to the right near that apartment building? That leads up to Naylor.
Splits to the right. Where the cursor?
Yeah, yeah, where the cursor is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think I'm still a little confused. The Good Hope Safeway, which is not in the picture, is that the bottom right, off the bottom right?
Let me see, the Good Hope Safeway. I'm not sure where the Good Hope Safeway is, to be honest.
How about Skyland?
Oh, it's further up. Yeah, it's not in this image.
Yeah, I know it's not in the image, but it's to the right.
Yeah, it'd be sort of to the right center.
Okay. So the alley system, the problem is that the next slide that shows the alley system is oriented differently.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We were trying to get the slides all in the same orientation so they would work for the presentation.
You're saying that the entire alley system is unimproved?
Yeah, I believe there's a small segment of the portion that leads up to Naylor Road that is improved, but certainly the portion of it that abuts this property, all the adjacent properties, and then leading out to Alabama Avenue, that's all unimproved.
But what you're doing is you're subdividing all those little lots.
Yeah, so they'll be combined into one lot for the development site. And then the portion of the alley that's not being closed, leading from our site out to Alabama Avenue, that will be improved. The developer is committed to improving that.
Okay. And it was your testimony that there are no other property owners that abut the portion of the alley to be closed. And it looks like the alley portion to be closed is a dead end. Am I correct?
That's correct, yes. It dead ends into part of the development site.
Okay, and you're building over the alley, that's your proposal?
Yes, yeah, part of the building footprint will be over where the alley is. If you go, Blaine, if you could go to the site plan, I think it's slide 6. Yeah, so here you can get a sense of it. So you can see where it's labeled 20-foot public alley and how it leads into the site. So the closed alley sort of goes down into part of the building, then kind of turns left and then turns down. So it'll, where the alley currently is, kind of goes underneath part of the building, underneath part of that parking area, and then underneath part of that landscape courtyard that's sort of in the center of the building.
Now, the only zoning approvals that were needed were BZA,
That's right.
and the BZA has fully approved. There's no other zoning relief needed at this point.
That's correct. And in fact, we just got an extension of the order. The order expired in October, but we got the BZA 2-year extension on that order.
I'm making a couple of notes here. Let me ask you about objections in the record. Now, we'll have the surveyor and Department of Transportation testify in a bit, but I sort of want you to speak for them at the moment. Are there any objections in the record?
There are no objections in the record.
Were there
At least,
some?
at least in terms of what we have of the agency and utility reports, there are no objections.
Does that mean that there's some reports that haven't been returned?
No. They're all returned and none of them have. I'm just saying, I don't know if anything else has been submitted by anybody else in objection, but in terms of the agencies and the utilities, there's no objections.
Did DDOT ask for any conditions?
They did not.
How about the ANC?
No.
As in, what does that mean?
They didn't ask for any conditions. One of the things that was worked out, you'll see in the letter that they submitted was for both the BZA and the alley closing. There is a condition in the BZA order for a transportation demand management plan that we will commit to, but it isn't directly relevant to this alley closing, but it is relevant to the project. But it wasn't in the DDOT's report with respect to the alley closing. The ANC letter, as I mentioned, addresses both the alley closing and the BZA case. We did slightly increase the parking count at the ANC's request. That's memorialized in the BZA plans that were approved.
When I said ANC, I didn't ask my question artfully at all. Is the ANC in support or opposed?
They're in support, yes. The letter indicates that they voted in support.
And are you aware of any community opposition?
I am not.
Let me just see if I have any other questions for you. Give me a second. Apparently DDOT in their statement is going to say something about tree removal.
Yeah, that tree removal is, the applicant has gotten all of the necessary permits for the tree removal, as far as I'm aware. But they did an analysis with DDOT years ago when we started the entitlement process. So the trees have been, what I want to say, there's been an accounting of the trees, and the trees that need permits for removal have gotten so.
And if they need permits, that makes me think you have to probably make a payment into the tree fund.
Yeah, so as far as I understand it, for a permit for trees that require a permit that are within certain diameter, there's a payment associated with that permit that goes into the tree fund.
Okay.
That's my understanding of how it works.
Let me ask you timing.
Mhm.
So has construction begun? My impression is not.
No, it has not. The plan is to begin construction probably mid next year. The project did receive its DHCD funding because as mentioned, it's an all affordable project. It's being funded through tax credits. So they are in the process of finalizing construction drawings, and I believe plan to submit for a permit early next year with the intent of constructing sometime, beginning construction rather, sometime mid to late next year.
So when does this alley closing have to take place? It has to take place before you can subdivide. Do you need to subdivide before you get your permit?
Yeah, it's a little complicated as far as I understand it, and I think the surveyor can speak to it better. My understanding is that yes, that's the case. In order to apply for the permit, the subdivision application needs to have been applied for, in which case I don't think we can apply for it until the alley is closed. I'll let the surveyor speak to that process exactly in terms of timing. But I don't think we can proceed to filing for a permit until at least the plat showing the alley closed is drawn.
And so when do you want to file for your permit?
Early next year.
Okay, I love expressions like that. Early next year could be January 2nd, or it could be like March is early.
I think the architect is on the phone. He might know more precisely when exactly they're planning to apply for a permit. Blaine, is Greg Sparhawk on the phone?
Has to unmute himself. How do you unmute?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Greg Sparhawk with GPS Designs. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes. When do you plan on filing for the permits?
So as Carrie had mentioned, we are finalizing construction permit drawings right now, the process of coordination back and forth. I think the expected date right now is our date to have documents ready for submittal. My office at least is, I believe, January 15th. Likely permit submittal will follow after all the coordination and everything with all the different consultants, probably March 15th.
You think you'll be applying for the permits by March 15th?
I believe that's the intent. I mean, obviously there are a number of agencies that we need to coordinate with and make sure we've got everything ready prior to that going in.
Okay. Okay, just to be clear, so the work on the drawings is happening now. You expect your work will be done by January 15th, and you expect that all the other coordinating parts are such that the permit application would be marked by March 15th.
Yes, ideally it's going to be a shorter period of time of that. It's just, I have, from experience, I know the time that it seems to take to get everything coordinated together kind of drags on.
Yeah. All right, I don't have any other questions for you all. If you could stick around, I think we'll probably excuse you from whatever Zoom room you're in, but please stick around. The surveyor and DDOT will be testifying at the end of the hearing. And if they have testimony that prompts me to want to ask you questions, I'll ask to bring you back. They may not.
Okay.
You never know. Thank you for your testimony, each of you.
Thank you.
We'll turn now to Bill 24-418, and that is the closing of a public alley in square 5612. We have three witnesses, Nyla Baptiste from Holland and Knight, Kwame Brown, who's listed as Murphy's Auto Body Shop, and Zachary Williams, who's with Venable LLP. All right. Somebody is making a lot of feedback noise, which makes me think they've got two computers open. Ms. Baptiste, you want to begin? And good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Chris Murray. Do you need to mute your computer?
I'm also told that George Jones wants to speak.
Can you hear me?
And maybe on the next bill, we'll find out.
I can't hear him. Chris, turn your computer on.
So I'm guessing, but I think that the feedback is because there's more than one laptop that's open to this Zoom in the room. So one of them has to be turned off or logged out.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you and I only hear you
No,
once.
I can't hear him. Okay.
And now I do get reverb.
Okay. I'm sorry. Maybe you should go to the next item and come back to us so we can figure this out.
We go to the next bill. Let me call on George Jones because he's not with I'm assuming the other two, Kwame Brown and Zachary Williams, are with you. All right, well, let's do this. Let's hear from George Jones and Zachary Williams. I believe they're not with the applicant. I'll check with Ms. Baptiste after them. If we're not ready, I'll go to the next bill. Mr. Jones, are you here on this bill or on two bills?
I'm on this bill. I think I may have listed it wrong, but this is the bill I expected.
All right, well, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm here on behalf of Bread for the City. We actually own a new facility here at 1700 Good Hope Road, Southeast DC. It's actually where I'm sitting. And the alley that is being proposed to be closed is adjacent to or abuts our property. And it is an alley that we use each morning. I used it this morning to enter our parking lot. The entrance is on 17th Street, a good 17th Street, Southeast DC. It's a one-way street. You make a left-hand turn onto the alley, and about more than halfway, probably 4/5 of the way down on that alley, to the right is the opening to Bread for the City's parking lot. The parking lot adjacent to our new 27,000 square foot community center. And so I've submitted a short testimony and trying to be even briefer. The bottom line is that we understand that the proposal to close that lot may not affect our ability to enter our parking lot. If that is true, based on the sort of schematics that I've seen, we have no problem, no opposition. However, if it does include our the piece of the alley that allows us to enter our parking lot. That would be a big problem because, again, not only do I, but several of our vendors and many of our staff use that entrance to get into our parking lot to enter our building.
That's reasonable. And at this point, I don't know what the plan is. And I would recommend that you stick around whenever we can get to Ms. Baptiste. We'll better understand what they're going to do. Do you know? I have a plat, and the plat doesn't have addresses on it. It's lot numbers. Do you know your lot number?
I have access to it. I don't actually have it in front of me, nor do I have it in my testimony, unfortunately.
Let me ask you this. Your property fronts on what street?
The entrance is on Good Hope Road. So if you to enter, you would enter our building. You would enter at 1700 Good Hope Road.
At 1700 Good Hope Road. So
Yeah.
that to me that you're right at the corner.
That's right. So our property essentially takes up the entire corner, all the way to the Murphy property on Good Hope Road and to at the other end of Good Hope Road at 17th Street. And then if you were to turn onto 7th Street, which you can't do, by the way, off Good Hope Road because it's one way. But if you were to turn walking on Good Hope Road on 17th Street, you would then walk, probably about 200 feet, and you still would be walking beside our property. You'd get to the alley that's in question. Maybe it's more than 200 feet. And you'd make a right into that alley. And again, that is where many of us enter into the property, taking that alley and then making a right back onto the property.
Well, if I'm reading the plat correctly,
it seems to shadow just before you get to our turn. Where they have the shaded
yes.
markings.
Your lot looks like it's sort of a pipe stem with
That's right.
The corner of 17th and Good Hope Road being the bowl of the pipe. And then it looks like the lot narrows back to the alley.
That's right. And it actually crosses the alley. So there's actually a portion of our property that actually crosses. So it looks, as my attorney said, it looks like a trapezoid, that parking lot portion. And it actually extends across the parking lot. And so there's a small section of it that actually is also our property on the other side of that.
Which would be lot 835 probably. The plat suggests that the portion of the alley to be closed is, I don't see any north-south on here. So I'm having to guess. East, west, north, south, south, south. So it looks to me like it's to the east of your property line is where the developer, if I'm right that this is development, has lot 820 and 830, and the alley behind their lots would be what closes.
Yeah, but we, to be honest with you, and we do have someone else on our line who's with Bradford City. I just could not tell it. I was not able to fully interpret what the closed portion was or is.
Okay.
Chairman, I might be able to help with this if I could weigh in. We represent George and Bradford the City. And my name is Zach Williams. Just want to provide some clarity. There's two plats in the record. And that's what the confusion, I think, is stemming from. And one shows the alley portion being closed east of the property. Another shows the alley portion being closed that includes the Bradford the City property, which we oppose because that would cut off our access. And so I think that Ms. Beatties can clarify this for the record. Since we hadn't heard from her yet, I just wanted to make that point that was our main issue, that as long as Bradford the City has access, then we have no issues. But it's just not totally clear from the record that that's the case.
Okay, that makes sense. And when we get to her, she'll answer that. Now, with the closing, without understanding exactly what the developer is planning, your access from 18th Street would be cut off. And you're okay with it? Nobody's answering.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Could you ask that question again?
Without knowing the development plans yet, looking at the plat, your access from 18th Street would be cut off.
Yeah, that access doesn't exist. It's already blocked from that direction. So yeah, it's yeah, but we don't care about it. Even if it weren't blocked, it's not a problem. But it is not available for access now. There's a wood fence at the end of the alley, at the end of that portion of the alley on the 17th Street side that doesn't allow you pass. So effectively, when you get to the Bedford City property and that turn into the parking lot, that's as far as you can go today. If you were to try to do that today, you couldn't go any further than that.
So what you're saying is what's being closed, you can't get to anyway.
Most of what, assuming they're not coming on the other side of the fence that blocks us,
Yes.
You can't get to anyway.
Okay. Mr. Williams, do you have anything to add?
Nothing beyond what we already discussed, Chairman.
Okay. And I have a statement from Mr. Jones. Do you have a written statement as well, or are you just relying on your client?
No, we're just relying on the client statement.
Okay, so what we need to look out for is to make sure that Bedford City continues to have access to the rear of its property off of 17th Street.
That's right.
Okay, I don't have any other questions for you. Thank you. We're going to hear testimony. I'm going to ask Ms. Baptiste if she's ready. And we'll either get to her now, or if she's not ready, we'll get to her later. And then at the end of the hearing, we will hear from the surveyor and the Department of Transportation. So that would be relevant to this bill as well. Thank you, each of you. So you might stick around, you don't have to. Let me see if Ms. Baptiste is ready.
Thank you.
Ms. Baptiste, you are, but I don't see you.
Should be right here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm very sorry for the technical difficulties on our end.
Okay.
Lila Batiste with the law firm of Holland and Knight, representing the applicant, Chris Murphy, who's the owner and operator of Murphy's Auto Body, located at 1708 Good Hope Road Southeast. Murphy's Auto Body is also represented by Kwame Brown, who is in the office with me today and will testify in support of the application. Just a brief description of the request. Blaine, if you don't mind pulling up our PowerPoint. Thank you. So you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Yes, so we're looking to close a very small portion of the alley system in square 5612. It's approximately 3,073 square feet of land area. And the portion of the alley to be closed is currently enclosed with the fence and has been enclosed since 1997 when Murphy's Auto Body purchased the property and started operating its business there. So Blaine, if you can go to the next couple of slides that show. So where these cars are located would be on the area that is the portion of the alley that we're looking to close. This portion of the alley system has always functioned solely to support the auto-related uses that have been on this property, and those uses date back to 1947. And we have a copy of the C of O for that 1947 use in the pre-hearing statement that we've submitted to you. And I appreciate the testimony from Mr. George, or Mr. Jones rather, from Bread for the City, because as he correctly noted, this portion of the alley is not even accessible right now. It's in between 17th and 18th Streets and has never been accessible. So the portion that we're looking to close only abuts the property that's owned by Murphy's Auto Body, and it would not in any way impact the current use of the alley system. In terms of agency reviews, Mr. Chairman, with the exception of DDOT and OP following DDOT's lead, all of the agencies have submitted letters of no objection into the record. In fact, I do want to note ANC 8A also has issued a letter in support, which is provided at Exhibit E of the pre-hearing statement that we've submitted. And just so you know, on the 17th Street side, that is the alley access for Bread for the City. On the other side of the auto body shop, that portion of the alley is used for a lot of criminal and illicit activity, quite frankly. And in fact, the ANC had even requested that we look to see if we can get that portion of the alley literally closed off because of the type of activity that goes on in that section of the alley. So in its report objecting to this application, DDOT recites its typical standards without really speaking specifically to the conditions and facts of this case and the property at issue. They don't speak to the history of how the alley has been used at 1708 Good Hope Road. And they don't talk about the importance of this business, not only to the immediate neighborhood, but to the residents, even like going, I guess, at Capitol Hill area. A lot of people in the district use this business for their auto body needs. So DDOT and I have one of their comments on the screen. They talk about the need for alley access in terms of future development of the Murphy's Auto Body site. And we understand that as a practical matter, should this site be redeveloped in the future, there will be a need to provide alley access. And we would agree to a condition that says if the site is redeveloped for something other than an auto body use, we would dedicate the land and improve this portion of the alley in accordance with DDOT standards. So we propose that condition. I'm going to end my testimony here, and Mr. Brown will give brief remarks in support of the application.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Kwame Brown, and I'm here on behalf of Murphy's Auto, as well as Anacostia Rental, Lease, and Sales, which is located at the same address. And I think it's important to give some history to some of the words that were taken before. Murphy's Auto, which is the Murphy's family, which are all native Washingtonians and all live in Washington, D.C. As a matter of fact, we all live east of the Anacostia River, all of the owners, purchased the old Chrysler dealership. And the old Chrysler dealership was there. It's been there since 1947. So this particular lot, this particular property, 80 years, almost 80 years, it's been the exact same way. DDOT made a reference, and I think it's important to note that we put a wooden fence around the property, and I think you can see in those pictures what they did not say, as well as Bread for City, because we own the Bread for the City lot, and we working with the city and selling that particular property to Bread for the City. To actually, we're big supporters of the Bread for the City. If you look right there at that wooden fence represents the entire lot. Outside of that wooden fence is the original steel fence. That means that is the original fence that the Daimler Chrysler dealership had since 1947. We have not moved anything. Only thing we did was put a wood fence around it to protect, what's inside of the facility, because as you could imagine that people were trying to jump the fence and steal stuff from the vehicles. So I wanted you to know in 1997, we bought it. The reason why we're here, and I think it's important, is that a DDOT representative walked onto the site, and they walked onto the site and told us that we had stole the public property and that they were going to report us to the authorities and that we were, in trouble for stealing the public alley. At that point, we was unsure what they meant by that, and we pretended to call DDOT, and come to find out, he came back to us and said, if you sell it, then everything will be okay, and then you guys can redevelop it, which we're not interested in doing. And in this particular area in historic Anacostia, there's so many people walking up and down the street trying to buy property. Once again, families own this, and let me be free and clear, the whole block. For almost 30 years. The council member got involved and supported the alley closing because it's a paper alley. There's unfinished, unbothered, there's nothing there. No one would have ever known that it was alley. Then the ANC came and they've held 3 meetings on this particular alley closing. And really they was trying to convince us, if you look at the map, the alley that's adjacent to the property, which we're not asking to be closed, on 18th Street Southeast on that side, when you go down that alley and that all back there is just abandoned cars and abandoned couches and illegal activity. And they were asking, could we add that to our application? That wasn't our, fight, but they was asking us to do that, which we did not do. I think it's also important to say that Murphy's Auto is the largest auto body shop in the District of Columbia. It is one of the largest auto body shops in the region. It's independently owned, it's African-American owned, and we all live east of the river. And we probably employ more people at Murphy's Auto than probably anyone else in the corridor, right? And that's, until 4 Points does their development. So what we're asking and what we're requesting is for an alley that has been never there for 80 years to be closed. And if you look there on the 17th Street side coming through, we don't bother Bread for the City lot because, as you can see from the picture, it's currently the same way that it is, which means the gentleman who, and I think that was Mr. Jones, who came to work today and drove in the alley and came inside, will do the same thing that he's currently doing. That doesn't affect him at all. Now, we do understand it is a potential buyer for lot 824 on T Street that has been talking to DDOT and others. He wants to buy that property, and how this came about is he thought that we own lot 835, and I want to be clear about that. And he wanted to agree to the alley closing if he could get lot 835, right? Which is not our lot, has nothing to do with us. That's his battle with Bread for the City, that he wanted to try to get that free for himself. So we have nothing to do with that at all in terms of that, because that's not what we're asking for to actually be closed. So in closing, understanding the Office of Planning and DDOT's position to never close any alley, I just find it ironic that if we was to develop it with a development plan, they would support it closed. But if we would keep it open, then that's the problem that they seem to have. But I'm glad that we do have a legislative body that's able to make decisions on behalf of the little guy. And I might sound a little concerned, Mr. Chairman, but the little guy shouldn't have to pay thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to go through this, to do this particular process for something that's been closed for 80 years and since 1947. We don't even know if it was open before 47. So we appreciate your time. We're asking the council, the committee, to approve the closing of this paper alley that's in existence as we speak. And we're both available, we're both here, Ms. Batiste and myself, to answer any question that you may have.
Thank you. So I do have some questions. Is Murphy's auto body shop, is that where the former Curtis Brothers dealership was?
Yes, the Chrysler dealership was. It was a
Was
Chrysler.
Curtis?
Yes. No. Curtis, the Curtis Brothers was down the street off of MLK.
No, they had
Curtis Brothers,
something.
Curtis Brothers. Yeah, that was the old Curtis Brother. Yeah. Yeah. So you see how far
was-
that goes back because they were way up the street. Yes.
Wasn't that far back, 1990s. They were selling used cars, I believe, on Good Hope Road. So this would be where it was.
Yes.
This is former Curtis Brothers. And is the Murphy family, are they owners or are they renters from Curtis?
No. The Murphys purchased a property. We are the largest land owner that's African American on Good Hope Road. We own pretty much 90% of the entire block. So we're owners. We don't rent it. Never rented. We was the first one to purchase a major
Okay.
dealership and convert it into that.
So I don't know if you have the plat in front of you, but so
I do.
Curtis owns, not Curtis, I'm sorry, Murphy owns 8 lots, 820, 830, 826.
Yes.
What about along 18th Street, 813, 812, 811, 810?
No.
What about further on 18th Street, 61, 60, 63, 62, you own those lots?
No.
And what about on 17th Street, 48, 831, 823, and so forth?
No. And
So
no
it's just along Good Hope Road that the family owns 820, 830, and 826.
Yes.
And 67 was sold to Bedford the City.
Yes. And 835.
Yes. Who owns 821? Murphy,
Yes. Murphys.
but not 824.
No, not 824. No.
Okay. Now, you said the Murphy family are DC residents currently?
Yes. Chris Murphy lives in Ward 7 resident. Another one's in Ward 4 and another one's in Ward 5. Long-term DC native Washingtonians, graduates of DC public schools.
Yes. And so as long as Murphy's had this property, and they've had this property since, did you say the late 1990s?
Yeah, 1997, so almost 26 years.
96.
97, Mr. Chairman.
And as long as they've had it, they've used the alley segment, which is the subject of this closing.
Yeah, when it was purchased in 1997, it was purchased as is. So everything that you see was an original fence around everything. So the original fence since 1947 is still there today.
Okay, this is all helpful. So let me ask Ms. Baptiste several questions. So there's no zoning issue here. This is just to clarify a situation.
That's correct.
And so just to be clear, lots 61, 60, no, lot 61, yeah, 66, 815, and 821, which abut the alley, they're not disadvantaged by this.
No, because they don't even use that portion of the alley for access.
Do you know the lots on 18th Street, 813, 812, 811, do they use the alley?
No, they don't use the portion that's going to be closed. You can see on the plat, there is an existing, paper alley that's shown on the plat that will remain open. But that's blocked, practically speaking, it's blocked by cars and other activities.
But it's kind of
So-
so it's kind of open behind 810, 811, 812, 813. It's open alleys. It's been an open alley. It's always been open alley. It's still open alley, but
But they don't use it to
but
drive.
they don't use it to drive. No, it's used for other purposes that A&C has issues with. But I want you to know it's paved alley.
Okay. Other than DDOT, are there any objections in the record?
The Office of Planning submitted a report late yesterday objecting to the application, essentially following DDOT's lead. And we talked to them about that before they filed.
Okay. So other than DDOT and OP, there are no objections in the record. What about the ANC and any civic groups?
Yeah, the ANC issued a letter of support. It's provided at Exhibit E of your pre-hearing statement.
Okay. I'm a little slow here.
All right.
From ANC 8A dated October 25th.
That's correct.
Okay. Give me just a second. Sorry to keep you waiting. I don't have any other questions for you at this time. I might have questions after DDOT testifies. So if you would stick around, that would be helpful. It's less likely I'll have questions for Mr. Jones or Mr. Williams, but if they want to stick around, just in case. So the order is I'm going to go to the next bill and then I'll call on the government witnesses. Thank you, each of you, for your testimony. I don't see, Kwame Brown's with you. And it's good to see former council member Chairman Brown. So thank you, each of you, for your testimony. And we're going to turn to the next bill. And that bill is Bill 24-442. And I have two witnesses, Carrie Kadlachek and Osama Swati.
Good afternoon. If we could pull up our presentation.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, my name is Carrie Kadlachek with Goulston & Stores. I serve as land use counsel for Grad Cardona Partners on the proposed assisted living development to which this alley closing application pertains. We have one witness here this morning to present testimony in support of Bill 24-422, Usama Sawadi, a partner at Grad Cardona Partners, which is the developer of the proposed project. We submitted our written statement and materials in support of the proposed alley closing to the Committee of the Whole on November 12th. As we noted in the statement, this application satisfies all applicable requirements of the DC Code, will further the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, and will enable a new all-affordable assisted living facility located less than 250 feet from the Benning Road Metro Station. With this application, the applicant proposes to close an approximately 108-foot long and 15-foot wide segment of an alley that bisects two lots located on 45th Street Northeast, just north of Benning Road in Ward 7. Excuse me. The closed alley will accommodate the construction of the new assisted living development with approximately 156 affordable units. Mr. Sawadi will speak shortly and provide additional background on the project, the community outreach process, and the benefits the project will bring to the surrounding community and to the district. Before doing so, we will note that each affected agency and utility has approved or stated no objection to the alley closure. In its report, DDOT formally reserved objection to the application subject to 3 conditions being met. As noted in our statement, we have agreed to these conditions and have communicated with DDOT staff accordingly. The 3 DDOT conditions are as follows. First, that the applicant proceed with filing for a building permit for the assisted living development as currently proposed. Second, that the applicant install signage and striping subject to DDOT review and approval to convert the portion of the public alley network that will remain to one-way traffic from 46th Street West and southbound Central Avenue. And third, that the applicant receive approval from the Urban Forestry Division for either a preservation plan or removal permits for trees located adjacent to the project. The applicant agrees with each of these conditions. The development team has applied for a building permit for the project and for necessary permits with Urban Forestry, and it commits to coordinating with DDOT to implement signage and striping for the remaining portion of the alley network as the project moves forward. With that, I'll conclude my testimony and we'll turn it over to Mr. Sawadi to present his testimony.
Thank you, Carrie. Mr. Chairman, Mike, to proceed? Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee of the whole. Thank you for the opportunity to present my testimony in support of Bill 24-442, closing of a portion of the public alley in Square 5138. My name is Usama Swati, and I am a partner with Gracker Partners, the developer of the all-affordable assisted living community for which this alley closing is requested. The site is located immediately north of the Benning Road Metro Station. The project consists of a 6-story L-shaped building with 156 all-affordable assisted living units. The project is targeted to serve the local residents through our marketing efforts and our ongoing engagement with the ANC. We intend that future residents of the project will consist primarily of seniors already living in the area, so the resident makeup will reflect the community in which the project will be located. In addition to increasing the stock of affordable housing and housing for seniors and transit-oriented housing, the project will create over 80 new permanent jobs that will pay more than the district living wage, and the project will also provide significant contracting opportunities for goods and services, both of which will be primarily targeted to district residents and businesses. We are also working closely with Industrial Bank, which currently occupies a portion of the site, in order to have them return to the site with the ground floor space in the new assisted living building after it's completed, which will be a great service to retain for the community and neighborhood residents. Sustainability and environmental quality also have been high on the list of priorities during the design and development process. The project will be certified LEED Silver and will include green roof, rooftop solar, and high efficiency building performance features. The alley segment we're proposing to close is located between 2 lots along 45th Street, both owned by Gracker Partners. The alley is on the west side of Square 5138, running east-west, and currently connects to the eastern side through to 46th Street, as well as an alley running north-south. Closing this alley segment will allow the 2 sites to be combined into one that will allow the construction of the proposed assisted living facility. The rest of the alley network in the square will remain open. As Carrie noted, we will be working with DDOT to implement signage and striping to convert the remaining alley to one-way traffic running west from 46th Street and then south to Central Avenue and the metro station at the end of the square. We have engaged with ANC 7D, the affected ANC, throughout the development process for the project, including regarding this alley closing application. As a result, ANC 7D has provided a letter of support of the application. We have also coordinated with numerous district agencies, including the Office of Planning and DDOT throughout the development process. Each of the affected agencies and utility companies have approved or have no objections to the application, except for DDOT's reservation of objections subject to the 3 conditions Carrie discussed, all of which we agree to. We have already applied for a building permit for the project and have applied for the necessary urban forestry permits as DDOT requested. And we have confirmed with DDOT that we will continue to coordinate to implement the signage and striping for the remaining portions of the alley, as I previously mentioned. Subject to these specific conditions, it is our understanding that DDOT is fully supportive of the closing of closing the alley as proposed. With that, I will conclude my remarks and will be available to answer any questions to the council and appreciate the opportunity to testify today. Thank you.
Thank you. And if that plaque could remain on the screen. So you, the applicant, have lots 137 and 145. and you are the only property owners abutting the portion of the alley to be closed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there are no objections from any of the other property owners in the square. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And DDOT has asked, and you've agreed, that the alley be made one way from 46th Street. That would be traveling whatever direction that is, probably west, and then south toward, I think you said that was Benning Road.
Yeah, Central Avenue. The alley currently terminates at the Metro Station parking lot, Chair. And we agreed with DDOT that that would be the new traffic pattern.
Yeah, that is, I do see Central. The AMC is in support. Is there any community opposition that you know of?
No, sir.
You may have spoken to this, but remind me, zoning approvals?
There are no current, we're not seeking any current zoning relief. The project is designed in accordance with the by right provisions of MU7.
All right, so it's a matter of right project.
That is correct.
I'm just making a couple of notes here. With the development plan, will the alley, although legally closed, will it remain open?
The proposed building will traverse. So the short answer is no. The L-shaped alley coming from 46 going south will remain fully open. The portion that we're asking to close will be occupied by the building that will take the L shape, crossing from lot 145 to lot 137.
And I think you said there were no objections in the record other than DDOT.
Yes, sir.
And you've agreed to DDOT's objection.
We've agreed to DDOT's conditions. Yes, sir.
Did you see? Oh, timing. So you haven't begun construction.
No, we have not. We are applying we've applied for our building permit, and we have cleared velocity through DCRA already. We are working on the last remaining sister agency approvals, and we expect those approvals to land here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And we are anticipating construction to commence. And taking a lesson from your earlier comment, we anticipate construction to start not early next year, but sometime in March at the latest.
So when do you have to do the subdivision?
We are, I'll let Carrie speak to that, but I believe we are, this is the critical path for that. The alley closure is critical
Yes, I
path for the
understand.
subdivision. Yes.
Yeah, certainly, we have to have the subdivision completed. I believe at least early in the construction process. Frankly, Mr. Chair, the DCRA's rules are not always exactly clear on this, but we have to have applied for it. I believe for the issuance of the permit, we have to have applied for the subdivision, in which case, I believe, as I mentioned in the prior bill testimony, the plat needs to have been drawn in accordance with the alley being closed. But again, I defer to the surveyor on that exact sequencing.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, in our most recent similar experience, our experience is the wall check stage, where once we come out of the ground with the foundation walls, the CRA has to conduct, and the survey has to conduct a wall check inspection. And generally speaking, that's when the subdivision has to be well on its way, I believe, towards a completion in order for us to not subject this construction to any suspensions.
Yeah, in fact, I believe that at wall check, I think the subdivision has to be fully complete and recorded.
That's correct.
So you've already applied for the building permit,
That is correct.
and that means that you're vested in terms of zoning, not that anybody's looking at changing the zoning, but you're vested because you've applied.
Very much so.
And it's your belief that you have to have the subdivision applied for before the wall check.
Correct. If I may add, Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned, because this is an all affordable project, we are working with this is a sister community to our first in Kenilworth Park, whereby we're financing through the long-term housing tax credit program, as well as tax exempt bonds issued through the DC Housing Finance Agency. And that financing outside of the permitting realm, the financing will require us to prove that the alley closure is and the subsequent subdivision are on track for approval.
So,
And sorry, Mr. Chairman, one correction too, notwithstanding what Mr. Sawadi said about the financing with respect to the permitting, I believe that the subdivision application needs to have been filed for the permit to be issued, but the subdivision needs to be complete and recorded at wall check.
okay, so let me just give you a little bit of a hard time. This project clearly has been in the works for at least months since you've already applied for the building permit. How come this was not introduced until October 8th? That's a month ago, and it was introduced by the council member rather than the mayor.
So I can say we filed the application with, I have to look back at when we filed the application with the surveyor. So that was several months ago, early this year. As you know, that is dependent on how quickly the agencies and the utilities return their reports before the surveyor will then have the full package that's ready to be introduced. We sought to ask the ward council member, Councilmember Gray, to introduce the legislation. Osama, help me with the timing on that, but I believe we began working with his office several months ago as well.
Yeah, it was late. It was early summer. I mentioned I believe the filing carry, if I'm not mistaken, with the Office of Surveyor was immediately after we closed on the purchase of the land, and we were committed to the project, which was the end of last year. It could have been the very early part of 2021, but we've commenced the agency process as early as we can. And as soon as we had clarity, we've approached Councilmember Gray to support and introduce the bill.
Okay, well, let me just say, I'm speaking more generally, not to this project specifically. The committee of the whole likes more time, and we are probably not going to be dealing with any more street and alley closings until either next March or next July. And folks can come to us, but clearly you need us to act on this in the next, I would say, next 2 months. And we may be able to do that, but we really should have more time to be able to process these matters.
Yeah, that's a very point well taken. Actually, I just want to clarify. We actually applied with the surveyor in November of 2020. So it was a year ago that we submitted the application. We didn't get our final agency comments until June. So it took 7 months for all the agencies to get their reports in.
Yeah.
And then that's when we immediately started working with Councilmember Gray's office.
Well, June to October was not introduced until October 8th. Be that as it may, let me just see if I have any other questions. Hold on. I did not have any other questions for you at this point. If you could stick around in case there's something that comes up after the surveyor and the associate director of DDOT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, each of you. So we'll turn now to Joseph Snyder, who's the surveyor, the DC surveyor, and Anna Chamberlain, who's the associate director for in the Planning and Sustainability Division of DDOT.
Are you ready for me, Mr. Chairman?
As ready as I'm going to be.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson, members and staff of the Committee of the Whole. I'm Joseph Snyder, surveyor for the District of Columbia at the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. I appear before you today to provide testimony on B 24-408, closing of a portion of a public alley in square 5730, SO 19-45936, Act of 2021. The purpose of this bill is to allow the applicant to consolidate the property separated by the alley for the construction of an all affordable apartment building with approximately 87 units and approximately 27 parking spaces in Ward 8. The applicant is the Way of the Cross Church of Christ Incorporated, who is represented by Golson and Stores. The portion of the alley to be closed in square 5730 was created by a plat of subdivision titled Estate of Thomas Thomas, recorded October 9, 1875, in subdivision book Governor Shepherd on page 33. Title of the portion of the alley to be closed could not be determined to be held by the District of Columbia or the United States. The most probable estimate of value as of January 1st, 2021, which represents tax year 2021, for the public alley to be closed in square 5730 is $80,790. The Office of the Surveyor notified the relevant executive branch agencies and utility companies of the application on August 22nd, 2019. The executive branch agencies and utility companies have no objections. Pursuant to DC Official Code 9-202.023, the Surveyor's Office notified the National Capital Planning Commission, NCPC, of this application on August 22nd, 2019. In a letter dated September 26, 2019, NCPC staff determined that the proposed project falls under an exception listed in Chapter 8 of NCPC submission guidelines. The project was also made available for the public to review on the NCPC website, and no comments were received. Pursuant to DC Official Code 9-202.025, Advisory Neighborhood Commission, ANC 8B, was notified of this application on August 22nd, 2019. ANC 8B voted in favor of this application. The applicant is the owner of the lots abutting the portion of the public alley to be closed. This concludes my testimony on 24-408. I'm going to do all three of them in unison, correct?
That's fine.
Okay. Turning to 24-418, the closing of a portion of a public alley in square 5612, SO 21-06924, Act of 2021. The purpose of this bill is to close a portion of the public alley system in square 5612, bounded by Good Hope Road, 18th Street, 17th Street, and T Street Southeast in Ward 8, to formalize existing conditions of the square and to accommodate certain improvements that have existed within the relevant portion of the public alley for nearly 40 years. The applicant is Christopher Murphy, who is represented by Holland and Knight LLP. The portion of the alley to be closed in square 5612 was created by a subdivision shown in the records of the Office of the Surveyor in book 136 on page 72, recorded October 7, 1954. Title to the closed alley has been determined to be held by the District of Columbia. The most probable estimate of value as of January 1st, 2021, which represents tax year 2022, for the public alley closed in square 5612 is $173,840. The Office of the Surveyor notified the relevant executive branch agencies of this application on September 14, 2021. In a letter dated November 10, 2021, the District Department of Transportation objected to the requested alley closure. To date, we have not received comments from Office of Planning and the Department of Housing and Community Development. Just want to note that we do understand that OP has submitted a report late yesterday. Still do not have anything from DHCD. The remaining executive branch agencies have no objection. The utility companies were notified of this application on September 14, 2021. In a letter dated September 17, 2021, Verizon objected to this application. The remaining utility companies have no objections. Pursuant to DC Official Code 9-202.023, the Surveyor's Office notified the National Capital Planning Commission, NCPC, of this application on September 14, 2021. In a letter dated October 27, 2021, NCPC concluded that the proposed project falls under an exception listed in Chapter 8 of the NCPC submission guidelines. The project was also made available for public review on NCPC website, and no comments were received. NCPC staff has determined that this project is exempt from commission review. Pursuant to DC Official Code 9-202.025, Advisory Neighborhood Commission ANC 8A was notified of this application on September 14th, 2021. In a letter dated October 25th, 2021, ANC 8A voted to support this application. The abutting property owners were notified of this application on September 24th, 2021. To date, we have not received any comments from the abutting property owners. Any comments received will be forwarded to council. Turning finally to B24-442. Closing of a portion of a public alley in square 5138, SO 20-07517, Act of 2021. The purpose of this bill is to facilitate the consolidation of the applicant's property and to provide for the future development of a new affordable assisted living project in Ward 7. The applicant is 45th Street Northeast Ventures LLC, who is represented by Goulston and Stores. The abutting lots 137 and 145 are presently owned by the Industrial Bank of Washington, but the applicant is the contract purchaser of said lots. The portion of the alley to be closed in square 5138 was created by a subdivision shown in the records of the Office of the Surveyor in Subdivision Book 49 on page 17, recorded November 3rd, 1913. Title to the portion of the alley to be closed cannot be determined to be held by the District of Columbia or the United States. The most probable estimate of value as of January 2nd, 2021, which represents tax year 2022 for the public alley closed in square 5138, is $362,360. Surveyor's Office notified the relevant executive branch agencies for this application on November 16, 2020. In a letter dated June 29, 2021, the District Department of Transportation objects to the requested alley closure until the conditions outlined in their letter are met. The utility companies were notified of this application on November 16, 2020. They have no objections to this application. Pursuant to DC Code 9-202.023, the Surveyor's Office notified the National Capital Planning Commission, NCPC, of this application on November 16, 2020. In a letter dated, hold one second. Apologies. Notified the National Capital Planning Commission, NCPC, of this application on November 16, 2020. In a letter dated December 29, 2020, NCPC staff determined that the proposed project falls under an exception listed in Chapter 8 of NCPC submission guidelines. The project was also made available for public review on the NCPC website, and no comments were received. NCPC staff has determined that this project is exempt from commission review. Pursuant to DC Official Code 9-202.025, Advisory Neighborhood Commission ANC 7D was notified of this application on November 16, 2020. In a letter dated June 26, 2021, ANC 7D voted in favor of this closing. The applicant is the contract purchaser of the lots abutting the portion of the alley to be closed. This concludes my testimony. I appreciate the opportunity to be here before you today and welcome any questions you may have regarding these matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chamberlain.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson, members of council, staff, and district residents. My name is Anna Chamberlain. I am the Associate Director of the Planning and Sustainability Division at the District Department of Transportation, also known as DDOT. I'm here today to present testimony on behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser and Acting DDOT Director Everett Lott regarding the three already mentioned bills, which I'll repeat. Bill 24-408, the closing of a portion of a public alley and square 5730, SO 19-45936, Act of 2021, Bill 24-418, the closing of a public alley and square 5612, SO 21-06924, Act of 2021, and Bill 24-442, the closing of a portion of public alley and square 5138, SO 20-07517, Act of 2021. The stated purpose of Bill 24-408 is to close a portion of an unimproved dead-end alley in square 5730, bounded by Naylor Road, 28th Street, Gainesville Street, 25th Street, and Alabama Avenue in Southeast Washington, D.C. in Ward 8. The applicant is the Way of the Cross Church of Christ Incorporated, and DDOT did file a report with the Surveyor's Office almost, 2 years ago, November 19, 2019, related to the SO 19-45936. DDOT has no objections to the closure, but we do want to clarify some of the comments that were made earlier that tree permit removal for clearing the site were submitted, but tree permits for the construction related to the new construction, either to preserve the existing trees that will remain or adjacent to the site. So they've submitted, so just to clarify, they've submitted tree permits for the removal of the clearing that were required to clear the site, but they have not submitted permits related to construction, to the new construction. And so it's just within the level of disturbance area. So moving on to the next bill, Bill 24-418, is to close a portion of the public alley in square 5612, bound by Good Hope Road, 17th Street, T Street, and 18th Street in the southeast quadrant in Ward 8. DDOT filed a report with the Office of the Surveyor last week, as had already been mentioned. And we object to the closure of the segment of the existing alley right-of-way in square 5612. And that is, we find there is a future transportation need. One could argue there might be one now, which is why some of they were mentioned that one of the squares doesn't have access to the alley system at all. Other ones are using just one way in because it's been fenced off, as has already been mentioned, for decades. But that doesn't mean that we want to permanently close that because there would be negative impacts to any future circulation. We think it would be an improvement, obviously, for it to be open, but the applicant can still occupy the right-of-way as is currently being done through a public space permit, a public space occupancy permit. And we don't feel there is a need to justify or support the closing of this alley and officially making it a dead end, two dead end stubs, which it's currently operating as such. But if we permanently close it, it will always operate as such, which is why we object to the closing of this particular alley. And then finally, for the last one, Bill 24-442 is to order the closing of a portion of the 15-foot wide alley in square 5138 in Ward 7. We filed a report with the Office of the Surveyor on June 29, 2021, related to the SO 20-07517. And in it, we noted that we objected until several conditions are met. The applicant has testified today that they have partially met, the conditions. They have applied for the permits that we have required, but they just haven't received approval. The applicant, so once these remaining two conditions have been fully met, we will remove our objection from to the recordation of the plat. So this concludes my testimony. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify before you today, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. So I do have a few questions. I think I'm going to start with this for Mr. Snyder. And that is, in terms of an alley closing necessary to subdivide the property, subdivision can include the consolidation of lots. At what point does the subdivision have to be recorded in order for the construction to proceed? Can you speak to that, Mr. Snyder?
Sure. And tip of the hat to Mr. Kaplacek, because what he was explaining was pretty much exactly correct. So a subdivision has to be applied for to be able to pull permits and begin construction. And while the permits are being obtained and construction is commencing, the recordation of the subdivision plat can occur in parallel. So they don't have, because sometimes it can take a couple of months to get a subdivision plat, all the required signatures and everything, to get that fully ratified and recorded in my records. And DCRA allows for the two processes, the permitting and initial construction and the subdivision plat, to be performed in parallel. So it kind of saves a little bit of time. For me to begin that application, in the case of an alley closing, that closure must be committed to law and posted on the DC, on the DC register. Like, I've got to be able to pull that law down off of limbs. And the day that I have that available to me, I record that plat. And then we can draft their subdivision plat. They could put in their subdivision plat that same day, their application for the subdivision plat the same day. And then, we DCRA will allow them to go through the permitting process. Then they have a couple months where they can get the subdivision plat recorded in my records, and everything kind of goes seamlessly. By the time they're ready for a wall check, I mean, that's, 6, 8, 9 months down the road, sometimes even longer than that. So subdivision plat, there's no reason why that subdivision plat shouldn't be completed at that time.
Let me kind of go over that. So you said a subdivision has to be applied for to pull permits. What about to issue a permit?
It's the same thing. For when they apply for a permit, it goes through a review period, then the permits are issued. That can occur, but the application for subdivision has to be in process while that is occurring, or they'll hold up even the review of the permit. But the alley has to be officially closed prior to that application being accepted by my office.
Now, what does that mean? The council votes first, once, then we vote a second time. Then we transmit to the mayor. The mayor signs, maybe not, but we'll say she signs. At the point that she signs, the measure is enacted. It then is sent to the Hill for a 30-day review, which can take months. Once the congressional review is completed, it becomes a law.
Yep.
So what step along that process does the I can't even understand my notes here.
It has to become law before I can record the plat. So it has to go through that congressional review, and then it gets posted. That law gets posted as a public record. Anybody can pull that off the LIMS site, and at that point, I record the plat.
So the application for the subdivision I didn't write all this down because there are lots of applications. The application for the building permits can take place. I've managed to totally confuse myself.
That's okay. The
The subdivision
application
has
for
to
the-
be applied for before the permits can be applied for.
They can be done in parallel so they can coincide with one another.
So even though the alley closing hasn't been completed, the subdivision can be applied for.
No. That alley has to be closed and it has to be law. And then I have to record that closing plat. That same day I close that plat, they can apply for subdivision and start their permit review process. But the subdivision actually takes some time for it to be recorded. It can take months. And,
Okay.
but that can occur in unison with the permit review, the permit issuance and all that. Those two processes can be done in parallel.
So basically, if a developer says that they want to file for their building permits on March 15th, the alley closing has to be law by March 15th.
Correct.
Now, is law good enough if it's an emergency?
Yes. As long as it's a law, then I'm authorized to record that plat.
All right, that answers that question. So let me, I had a couple of questions for both of you. Let me see. On the, I want to take Bill 24-408. My question for Ms. Chamberlain is, you mentioned there's several things that DDOT wants, but it seems to me we don't need to condition the alley closing on those things, like getting the permits for the trees. Because, I mean, we don't condition an alley closing on getting permits for construction. They have to get those permits regardless. So I'm just wanting to clarify that we don't have to have a condition in the legislation for, this is for 408.
Correct, and we didn't make it a condition in our report. We just wanted to clarify when they made a statement that all tree removal permits had already been obtained, that only the tree removal permits for site clearing had been obtained, but not for the construction or anything within the level of site of disturbance.
Okay. And I don't think I had any questions of Mr. Snyder on Bill 24-408. Let me skip to 24-442. Ms. Chamberlain, again, you list 3 conditions. Do you want those to be conditions of the legislation?
Yes, we did make that request, and they're in process already. So the permits have been submitted, they just haven't been approved. So we expect to be able to remove that, our objection fairly quickly.
That
But
would
it
be,
depends on the speed of which comes first.
yeah. Well, that's for the building permit application. The second condition is the
striping.
signage and striping.
Correct.
Can they not just simply agree to it and then it doesn't have to be a condition?
Well, we'd want to make sure that they actually install them.
Well, the condition, the recording. I don't know, does the surveyor wait for the conditions to be met before he records? Mr. Snyder?
As soon as it becomes law, I record the plats.
Even if they're conditions to the closing?
If the conditions are in the legislation, then I do wait.
Because one of the conditions is the striping, and I totally get that DDOT wants to be able to approve the striping. But I assume that's not happening to the end of the project.
So typically there's two things where I will hold up the recording of a plat. If there's something in the legislation that is required, like the recording of some kind of a use agreement or covenant or any other stipulation, I will hold up the recording of the plat till those conditions are met.
Okay, so the recording of the plat, which is the alley closing, which then enables the application for subdivision to be filed, has to wait until the condition is met. And in the case of the striping, that would be at the end of the construction. So I think we have to find a way to deal with that condition. And the tree preservation plan, Ms. Chamberlain, you think that's close to being resolved?
Yeah, it's a huge site, so there's lots of trees there, but yes.
I mean, it may be that the way to approach the striping is to have a some sort of a, maybe not an easement, but some sort of a written agreement or contract that they have to do that. Because then that's enforceable and the recordation doesn't have to wait. Thinking that over, you don't want to agree because you have to probably talk to folks, but.
Yeah, it just puts us in a bind of lots of legal reviews. It adds an extra layer of agreements. When I guess this one, there's a time crunch, right? That's what they're trying to get to.
Well, both of them have a time crunch. Both of them have a time, the first and the third have a time crunch.
But we're actually not asking even that they do the installation, but that they submit and get approval. So it's really just a permit approval, and that should, I mean, there's no reason why it wouldn't happen before March.
I'm looking at your statement. Your statement may be different than what is in the record. Second condition is that the applicant will install appropriate signage and striping. So if you're saying that it has a plan that's approved?
Yeah, we ask that they submit the permits for our review and approval, I guess, with the understanding that they would install it.
Do those kinds of permits expire with time?
They do.
When you issue a permit, it's good for 6 months, a year, or is it infinite?
It depends. It depends on what the permit's for, but a signage installation would be good for at least a year. Unless there's like changes. I mean, there's not going to be changes to an alley.
Yeah. Okay, let me turn to 24-418. Mr. Snyder, you said the title is held by the District of Columbia. I think this is the first time in 40 years that the surveyor has said the title is held by the district or federal government. I exaggerate slightly.
There's been a few times. It's very few times where we determine it is owned by the district, and the reason for that in this case is a private person specifically dedicated some land to the District of Columbia. I'm looking through it right now as we're. Just please give me a minute to pull up the plat here. And I think I did supply you with a copy of that subdivision plat. So the owners specific of the property, and it's actually former versions of the properties that are now seeking it. it states in here, dedicate the same to the District of Columbia for public alley. So it's private property that they are giving to the city of Washington, D.C. I don't know who else could claim ownership of it by fee title. I don't know. There's a lot of attorneys on this meeting. Maybe somebody has a different opinion about it, but
Well, but
as a surveyor
so
for the district, that's my opinion. It belongs to the
based
city of
on,
Washington.
based on your understanding, if we were to close the alley, then the Murphy's Auto Body Shop would not have the land. They don't actually solve their problem because the alley would not revert to them.
It actually does, because if we look at the plat where the alley was created, it came directly out of private property that were former versions of these self-same lots. So
It would revert.
it would revert directly to those properties. There's no, like, the properties to the north of that have no revertible rights.
All right, that answers that question. Ms. Chamberlain, how likely is it they could get a public space permit? Because I think that's not in your written statement. But
Correct. It's in our surveyor's order report where they can obtain a public space permit to maintain the existing conditions, and especially for car use, car usage for car, exactly for this purposes, they are allowed in the DCMR to use public space, which is why, you know, lots of folks complain. You see a lot of those used parking lots where they're extending beyond their property line. It's actually an allowable use.
and where is this in which report is this?
To the surveyor's office.
Oh, in the DDOT's report.
Correct, correct.
So I'm going to state this as, I think, a double negative. It's not unlikely that they could get a public space permit. They'd probably have to pay for it, but then they would be able to continue to use the alley as they are using it now.
Correct.
Give me a second. Give me just a second. With regard to this bill, why is Verizon objecting? Do they have poles in that alley? That might be for Mr. Snyder.
I'm uncertain why, like, what their specific objection is. I'm going to look through and see if I can pull up their letter real quick.
And while you're looking, it's my understanding that both OP and DDOT, in terms of government agencies, have objected.
Correct. So in here, Verizon is asking for, there's a couple of different things. I guess they have sort of a boilerplate thing that they do, but what they've checked, the check boxes are: an easement will be provided and paid for by the owners with meets and bounds description with a plat and all documentation necessary to record the easement to permit existing telephone plant to remain in its present location subject to Verizon approval. Then the other box that they've checked says Verizon is fully reimbursed for relocating its plant and feeders. Alley street closing will not take place until the these facilities are completely relocated and permanent services are restored fully to all customers affected by the move.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for you, either of you. Thank you for your testimony, and I don't have questions for the other witnesses who testified on behalf of the applications. So I'm going to close out this hearing. If anything comes up, Blaine, Stone, and my staff will reach out. And I want to thank you, Ms. Chamberlain, Mr. Snyder, and the earlier witnesses for your testimony. Remind everybody the record in this matter is open for 2 weeks. We'll close at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. Time is 3:24 in the afternoon, and this hearing is adjourned.